All right. Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to yesterlore. I am Grimm's lawyer, and we are going to start tonight our reading of Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. Had a little bit of technical difficulties at the beginning of today. I'm still a little bit trying to adjust some stuff here on OBS. That looks okay. All right. So, before we start reading, you can actually see some of the text on the screen right now. I believe I have the link. Yeah, the link I'm going to put in the chat and pin to the text that I'm reading. Don't know why the view full text thing is not showing up as part of the link. Anyways, what we will be doing today is starting the first, what are labeled as passus here. That is my phone telling me that I am on Twitch. Thanks. I need to mute my phone. Forgot to do that. Here it's labeled passus. In some places it's labeled fitt, F-I-T-T. They're basically sections of the poem. There are 4 of them that the poem tends to be broken up into. So what is this poem? This poem is a matter of great scholarly debate. So what is this poem is actually kind of a tricky thing to answer. But it is found in the Cottonero AX, or A10. I think the X is a Roman numeral there. Manuscript, which also holds some other stuff, like a copy of London's Foreign Gospel and Old English Prayer Book, a bunch of other stuff in there. But it also contains this poem and some other poems. Just a pretty cool manuscript. Glad it survived the cotton fire that we discussed way back when we were talking about the rune poem. So it is a Middle English poem. I'm going to adjust my camera there a little bit too. It is a Middle English poem written somewhere between the late 1300s and the end of the 1400s, somewhere in there. And it seems to be in the West Midlands dialect of Middle English. So we're still dealing with Middle English stuff here. And it can be difficult sometimes, the West Midlands dialect, to understand, but we're going to do our best. There are lots of modern English editions of this this poem, and there are some modern adaptations, the most recent one being the A24 film from 2021. I believe it came out in 2021, The Green Knight, starring Dev Patel as the titular Sir Gawain. But it took a lot of liberties. Definitely a lot of liberties, especially in some of the key aspects of this poem, I would argue. They're telling a very different story with some of the same or similar imagery and some similar plot points. But characters are very different, and the tone and the themes are a bit different, I would say. But this poem is notable for a lot of reasons. One of the ways in which it's notable is that it's kind of weird, even by medieval poetry standards, in terms of like what happens and trying to unpack why and what the poet's trying to say. It is very difficult. And there are a lot of conflicting theories about how to interpret this poem's themes. What we are going to try to do is just read it for enjoyment's sake, see what we can learn about what the poet is saying, and come to our own conclusions based on what we read. I don't think we're going to solve together what this poem is about. Everyone's going to have their own perspective, but I do think it's a fun and interesting poem, just because a lot of stuff happens. A lot of wild stuff happens in this poem. So, that is what we're going to do today. We're going to try to get through at least a good portion of the first fitt or passus, if not all of it. So with this one, because the dialect's a little bit more difficult, I'm going to read chunks. It's sort of broken up into stanzas. It is broken up into stanzas, definitely, but it ends up looking kind of weird compared to some of the other stanzaic poetry we've read in Middle English. Still the similar overall structure of like longer lines and then shorter lines at the end. And here we've got both alliteration and some aspects of rhyme going on, but the alliteration seems to be a lot more important than anything else, but they're definitely in some rhyme. So a lot can be said about the meter here too. I'm not going to. We're just going to get started. So I will begin. We're going to get setting the stage here. And if you'd like to follow along, you can look at the link instead of, if you don't want to look at my face. I edited the filters and stuff to be green because it's about the Green Knight, so that's why I did that. Let's start. Sithen the Seja and the assault what seized at Troia, the Borg Britanid and brent to Bronde Ascus. The tulk that the trames of Treson the rocht, was tried for his treachery, the trewest on eartha. It was Aeneas the Athel, and his hie kinde, that siden depressed provinces and patrons become, well nigh of all the welle in the West Isles. Fro riche Romulus to Roma riches him switha, with great babons that Borga hebeges upon first, and nowines hit his own nome as hit now hat. Tyrius to Tuscan and Teldes beginnes, Langa berda in Lombardia liftes up homes, and fair over the French flood Felix Brutus. On money bonkes full brode Bretagne he settest, with winna settest with win. Where were and wraka and wonder, besithes hats wound therein, and oft both blisse and blunder full skate had skifted sinne. And the queen his Bretagne, was bigot bethis born rich, bolde bredden therein, baret that loveden. In money turned time tene that rochten. Mo verlies on this folder han fallen her oft, than in any other that I wat, sin that ilk time. But of alle that her bult, of Bretagne's kings, I was Arthur the hendest, as I have heard it tell. Okay, let's pause there. So what's going on? We haven't got gawain and we haven't had a Green Knight yet. So what's happening? What we have here is we're setting the stage, as a lot of medieval poetry likes to do, just kind of giving this some background. And a thing that a lot of Middle English poetry likes to do is, and this isn't unique to Middle English poetry, certainly, connect its history back to Troy. We're trying to connect from like ancient Greek classical history through to the story that we're telling. So we've got, at the beginning, it's talking about, since the siege and assault was ceased at Troy. That's the first line. So now that the fight at Troy is done, or after the fight at Troy is done, and then we get some description of that. The city was burnt to ashes. It talks about like the different princes of Troy who went and founded kings. We get Aeneas, we get Romulus, who was not a Trojan, as far as I'm aware, but that's the story that's being told here. Tyrius went to Tuscany. Langobard in Lombardy. The Langobards were a people, but here there's a person named Langobard who's founding Lombardy. And then Felix Brutus is the one who is sailing to Britain, because it was believed at the time that the word Britain came from his name. Now, we're pretty sure, linguists are pretty sure nowadays it's not from his name. There's an ancient Greek word it probably is borrowed from, but at the same time, the ancient Greek word might itself be a borrowing from a Gaulish word. But in any case, not from Brutus. But that was what was believed at the time, and there are quite a few poems and other stories that explain how Britain was founded by King Brutus. And that's what's being alluded to here. And then it just kind of goes through and talks about that, and how there have been many a tale that have happened in Britain, and some great kings, but none so great as Arthur. None was greater than Arthur here. Ever was Arthur the most adept, basically, is how I would translate that. Hendest, as he hath heard tell. As I have heard tell, Arthur's the best, as far as I'm aware. That's what the poet is saying. Okay, so let's continue. See what else the poet has to say. I'm just realizing that some of my screen is cut off, where I don't want it to be cut off. I'll fix that. There we go. Alright. Forthien aunterin erdi atle to sjå, for the selly in sicht summa men hit holden, and an ultrage aventur of Arthur's wonders. If ye will listen, says Laia bought on little quilla, ye shall tell hit as tit, as ye in tone harda with tonga. And it is stad and stocken, in story stiff and stronger, with lel letteres locken, in London so had's been longer. This king lie at Camelot upon Christmas, with money lufflich lord, ladies of the best, reckonly of the round table, alle so rich brother, with rich revel, oricht, and richless merdes. There tornide tulkes betimes full money, justed full jolly lay, this gentile knichtes, seden kaired to the court, Carolus Tomaka, for there the fest wats Elicha full 15 dias, with alle the met and the mirtha that men kutha visa, such glaum and glay, glorious to here, der dun upon die, dozing on nichtes, all what's hap upon heia in hallets and the chambres, with lordes and ladies, as lewest him thocht. With all the well of the world thy wanted there samen, the most kid knechtes under Christus selven, and the lovelockest ladies that ever live have hadden. And he the comlockest king that the court haldes, for all what's this fire folk in her first age, on Silla, the hapnest under heaven, king highest mon of willa, hit were no great nie to neven, so hardy a hera on hilla, will a new year, what's so yip, that it what's new common. Fat die double on the deke was, the doth serwed. For the king was coming in knichtes into the halle. The chantre of the chapel cheve to an end. Loda kie what's der kest of clerkes and other. No well nighted on noe, nevened full ofte, and sithen riche forth running to riche hondeselle. Jeged jerjes giftes on he, yelde him behond. Da batted busily about so giftes. Not the time, Windows Defender. Ladies laget full load, for thy lost hadden, and he that one what's not rather, that my ye well trower, all of this mirth thy madden to the meta tema, when thy had washen forthily, thy went into seta, the best borna ayabov, as it best semed, when Gwenora full guy grathed in the middes, dressed on the dere des, dubbed alle bota, smal sendel besides, as selvre hier over, of triwid tolosa, and tars tapetis enoche, that were embrouded and beten with the best gemmes, that micht beprevid of pris, with pennies tobia in dire. The commelokest to discrie, verglent with Ian Grai, as some looker that ever he see, soth mocht no man sigh. Okay, I'm going to stop here because I think this is where the stanza ends. The stanzas and the line breaks are not quite, or the page breaks are not quite adding up, and I'm not quite sure what these page breaks are based on, actually. I read sort of the about table of contents part, and I was not finding what that was actually referring to, the pages. So my suspicion is that this is like an addition of the J.R.R. Tolkien and E.V. Gordon, what's the word I'm looking for? Transcription of what is the actual manuscript, which we are not reading from. It's a challenge. I'm going to try to stick with stanzas. I read 2 stanzas there because we're getting in these stanzas basically a long description of this actual scene that the story is starting in. So let's go back over what that is. The actual first stanza ends here, and then I think we have a second one here. Still sort of doing lead up in this first part. Essentially, we have got the poet saying that there's an adventure I heard that I'm going to tell, that I'm going to show, and it's about an amazing adventure, and by adventure they just mean like story, cool thing that happens, quest that occurred. And then he goes into describing Arthur's court at Christmas. So we're at Christmas, Christmassa. Many lovely lords and ladies of the best. So we're describing the many lovely lords and ladies and the round table, and we get lots of vivid description of how they're partying, basically. We've got lots of celebration, music, dancing, jousting, whole event, basically, that is being held in honor of Christ's birth. That's being emphasized here. And so that lasts for several days, and then it comes to New Year's Eve. And they're specifically at a party in King Arthur's Hall. It's still Christmas. They're celebrating again. It's just continual days and days and days of partying and eating and drinking and having a great time. And then we get a description of Gwenor here, which is Guinevere. We've seen her as Gainor in the last long poem that we read. And how she's adorned. She's on the dais. She's adorned with silver and tars and gems, and she's all decked out. And she's described as the comlocus to describe, the comeliest to describe. And in this time period, this would have been a compliment. She looks great, is what it's saying. And we actually get that same description of Arthur further up. I'm going to see if I can find it. I lost it, but yeah. And hey, the comlocus king that the court haldes. So they're both hot, is what we're getting. That's the idea there. So we're still partying is basically where we're at. And I lost my line. I lost my line. I wanted to find an edition online that had line numbers, but I did not succeed in doing so. Maybe it's not too late, because I totally got lost where I was. Oh, we were here. Soth mocht no monsai. So there was never a more amazing sight. So, but Arthur would not eat till all were served. He was so jolly of his joyfulness, and somewhat chilgered. His lief leaked him licht. He loved the lasse author to longe lie or to longe sitte. So busied him his longe blood and his brain wilde. And also another manner meved him eke, that he burg nobelei had nomen. He would never eat upon such a dere day, him devised were of some aventures thing, an unkoth tale, of some mein merveil, that he micht traue, of alders of armes of other aventures, over some sedge him besocht, of some sicker knecht, to join him with him in justing, in jopar day to lie, lede, leaf for leaf, leve uchan other. As fortuna wilde volsen hom, the fire to have. This was the king's countenance where he in court were. At uch farand fest among his frey many in halle. Therefore of fasse so faire, his stichtlet stiffen stale, full jep in that new year, much merthe he mas with alle. Okay, so we learn in this stanza that, but Arthur would not eat till all was served. He's going to wait until everyone has their food. But there's another thing that's going to be keeping him from eating. It's one of the mevehid ek. He would never eat upon such a dear day. He's never going to eat on such like a festive day before, ere him devised were, either some adventurous thing, an unknown tale. So either someone has to tell him some story. Instead of a bedtime story, it's a dinner time story. He needs a dinner time story. Or some kind of marvelous thing has to happen. Maybe juggling, maybe magic trick. Probably not a magic trick in this time period, but some kind of jester doing something fun. Some amazing event. Some miracle might happen, then he'll eat. Some kind of thing having to do with arms. Someone might seek out to challenge someone else in jousting. Someone's life has to be at risk, maybe. He needs some excitement before he can eat, is basically what we learn here. On this New Year's Day, he's like, what do you got? What are we gonna do before we eat? Now that we're all served, something's gotta happen. So, let's find out what happens this year. Thus verstandes installe the Steve King hiselven. Talkande before the hie table of trivles full hende. Their gode gawain, what's greithed gwenor beside, and agravain, alla dure, mine on that other side sittes. Both of the kinges, sistersones, and full sicker knichtes. Bishop Baudewen above beginneth the table, and Uan Vrinson, Urinson, ate with himself. This were dicht on the des, and there were the served, and said the money seeker sege at the seat borders. Then the first course come with cracking of trumpets, with money banner full bricht that there be hanged. Sorry, switched into Old English for a second. Hanged. Nu en akren noise with the noble peepes, will the werbles, and with wacknet lotte. That money hert full hie have at her touches, Dantes driven therewith, of full deremetes. Fossen of the fresh, and on so felle dishes, that pine to finde the place the people beforne, for to sette the silveren, that servis sewis halden on cloth. Each lady as he loved himself, verlacht without an love, without an lodach. I twa had the swelva. God bear and brecht with wind bother. Okay, so we get now a description of who else is sitting there. So we got Arthur, he's on his throne, and we've got Guinevere, she's on her throne. All is well. They both look amazing. And now we get who else is sitting there with the king. Well, on one side of Guinevere is Gawain. This is our titular Gawain and the Green Knight. You'll see his name spelled a few different ways, like we have before. We've seen like Gainur spelled with like a W or a G, like Wainur, Gainur. Same thing with Gawain, and we're going to see that here. Wawan, Gawan, Wawin. You'll see all sorts in this poem. Whatever the alliteration needs here, they can just both be G's because they're both sitting next to each other. So Gawain is on one side, and Agravain is on the other side. They are both the king's sister sons, so nephews through his sister. Gawain is Arthur's nephew in quite a few stories, as is Agravain. In some stories, Agravain is his brother, and in others, he's some other relative of him, like his cousin or something. It depends on the story. Here, it seems like he's his brother. So, unless they're from two different sisters, I don't think that's clarified in this poem at all. Because depending on the story, Arthur has a different amount of siblings. Anyways, Gawain and Agravain on either side of Guinevere. Again, interesting here that we have Gawain seated with Guinevere. They seem to be together in a lot of stories, but I think it's significant in this poem because that description of Guinevere that we got, it's interesting that we get a more detailed description of Guinevere and how like she's seated on the dais, whereas we get like description of Arthur, the fact that he's a great king of legend and stuff, but we get a more detailed description of Guinevere and how she looks and what she's doing sitting on her dais on her throne on the dais. There's just a lot more like emphasis on her, it seems. She's in the sort of like extra rhymey bit near the end of a stanza. And I think, she's going to be significant later in the story. I think it's interesting that Gawain is seated with her. I think one reason why they might be together a lot of the time might just be the alliteration, like their names are conveniently alliterative. And Gawain is like a hero in a lot of stories, so yeah, sure, have him sit with the queen. Sitting with his, I guess, aunt-in-law. So, yeah. Both the king's sister sons. And then we get some other knights that are there. There's Bishop. There's some other knights, Egwene, sitting by himself. And other people not on the dais on either side. Just seated. And there's some great music that gets played. They have all their food. Many dishes served. Warbling, singing, pipes. Everything's great. Great clothes. Everyone is all decked out. Good beer. Bright joy. Both. So, no will I of horse service say yo no more. For uch weeke my well wit no want that there were. Another noise full newe neged believer, that the lude micht have leve liflode to catch. For beneath what's the noise, not a wheel season, and the first course in the court kindly served, there halles in at the halle door and achliche meister, on the most on the molde on mesure hier. Fro the swire to the swange, so swara and so thick, and his limmes so long and so great. Half etain in erde I hope that he were. But mon most I algate min him to bene, and that the merriest in his muckle that micht ride. For of back and of breast all were his body stern. Both his womb and his waist were worthily smaller, and alle his fetters volgende in form that they had a full kleine. For wonder of his hue men hadde, Sett in his sumblet scene, he ferda as freke wer fada, and overall enker grena. And all greiðin grena his goma, this goma and his wedes. A straight coat full strecht that stick on his sides, and merry mantle above mennesker within, with pelure hored apert, they panne full kleine with blide blauner full bricht on his hold bothe. That what's lacht fro his lockets, and leide on his shoulders, hemme well haled hosa of that sama. That spennet on his sparler, and kleine spores under, of bricht golde upon silk bordes bared, full riche, and shawles under shankes there the shalk rides, and alle his vesture, verily, what kleine verdure. Both the bars of his belt and other blide stoneth, that were richly riled in his array kleine, about himself on his saddle upon stilk werkets, that were to tor, for to tell of trifles the halve, that were embroidered above with brides and fliges, with gay gaudy of grena, the golda eye in middes, the pendants on his paitrur, the prode cropura, his mollines and alle the metal enameled was thinne, the stirrups that is stood on steine of the sama, and his arsons all after and his adel skirtes, that ever glimmered and glent all of grene stones, the full that her ferkes on fin of that ilke certain, a grene horse great and thick, a steed full stiff to straina, in broad and bridle quick, to the goma he wats full gain. Okay, I read a couple stanzas there, because it was a couple stanzas worth of just, once again, straight up description, but I will talk about what it's a description of. So the poet says, now will I of that her service say you no more. I'm not going to talk about their party anymore, and by their service, it just means like all the food and stuff they had. We're going to move on from that topic, because I'm going to tell you what happened next. There's a loud Lude mich have leve livlet will catch. I just lost myself. This is where, once again, I wish we had line numbers. Neget believe have the Lude mich have leve livlet. So he moves on from talking about the service to talking about a loud noise that comes in. All of a sudden, they don't quite sort of stop their music right away, but suddenly rides in a dude on a horse. But he's an achlich meister, a like fearsome. Well, meister is where we get the word master from, but it doesn't quite mean master so much as just like guy who commands awe. In this case, ach is awe. Awe is in awesome or awful. In this case, he's just like scary to behold. But then we get like 2 stanzas worth of description of his appearance. This is in comparison to a few lines about Guinevere. We have just all the detail about what he looks like. So the main things is he looks human, except that he's like very tall, like almost a giant tall, but he was a person. And he's like, the poet specifies that he's buff of his back and his breast. He's built, but he has like a thinner waist. So think Dorito shape, roughly. Sorry, I just heard a beeping noise. Don't know where that was coming from. It sounded like it came from outside. But yeah, he's that kind of buff, basically. And but the key thing, other than him being pretty tall, the other thing that makes him stand out is that he is green. His body is green. His clothes are green. His horse is green. Hence the title of the poem. He's just a green dude, but he's very strong looking, and we get a lot of description of what he looks like. He's wearing a straight coat. He has green clothes, like I said. Wearing some furs. He seems wealthy. Like richly adorned, as a lot of the people in Arthur's court seem to be. Everything he's wearing is pretty much everything he's wearing is green. He has belt. He's got jewels. It's hard to figure out like what I should include in here without just reading it all over again. But basically, he's all green. His horse is all green. His horse is awesome too. Just lots of physical description of what he looks like here. Like a lot, like more than Ebony Darkness to Raven Way levels of description of what he's wearing. So that's fun. Again, we get like lengthy descriptions of people's clothes sometimes in other medieval poems, but this is a lot. Even for medieval poetry, there's a lot of description of specifically his clothes. And he's supposed to be a fantastical character, so that makes a lot of sense. But I think it's interesting, just given some of the other things that happen later in the story, that we spend so much time on what he's wearing here. So, let us read the next stanza, and I'll try to do just one this time. Well, guy, what's this goma? Get it in grena. We know. He's wearing green. We know. On the hair of his head, of his horse swete. Fire fan and fax befoldes his shoulders. And much bed as a busk over his breast hanges. Fat with his heelich hair thought of his head riches. Was evisit all unbetorn above his elbows. That half his arms thereunder were halched in the wiese. Of a king's capados that close his swere. The manner of that mine horse, much to hit like, well cresped and kemed, cresped and semed, with knottes full money, folden in with fildura, about the fire grene, aye a herla of the hair, an other of gold, the tile of his topping twinen of a suit, and bounden both with a band of a bricht grene, dubbed with full therestones as the dog lasted. Sithen throwen with a thwong, a thwarle knocht a lofte. Thermony bellets full bricht of brende golde rungen. Such a fall upon folde, ne frek that him reades, what's never sena in that silla with sicht, that time with ige. He looked as light so licht, so side all that him siege. Het seemed as no man micht under his dintes drije. Okay. So here, more description of what he's wearing and what he looks like. So, he's so dressed in green, and the hair of his horse's head is green. His beautiful locks that we get described. Let me see if I can find that line. Yeah. Fire fun and fax befoldes his shoulders. He has awesome hair, and it goes down to his shoulders. Or it clings above his shoulders, really. And he has a beard, hangs over his breast. We get a description of his mantle that he's wearing, like a king's mantle. His horse's mane is all decorated, braided, and stuff. And there's gold thread in it. Basically, he's all green, but gems and gold and stuff woven into all of his garments. So he's not just green, like he's green, but with flair, basically. And he looks so great. The stanza ends. Let me find the stanza end again. He looked as light so licht. He looks like. He looked as so light as light. Light is that's from Old English light, which is like lightning or any kind of like beam of light. It's like a flash. So said all that him see it. All that see him say that. Or said that. It seemed het seemed as no man micht under his dintes drija. Drija means like suffer here, like or like be able to bear his dints. And we'll talk about his dints. Because he is going to be doing some denting. Where were we? Here. Whether had he no helma, ne hoburg nother, ne no pisan, ne no plata that pented to armes, ne no shafte, ne no schelde to shrua, ne to smita. Both in his on honda, he had a holland bobbe. But is gratis in grena, when greves are bara, and an axe in his other, a hoga and meta. Aspetot sparda to exponen spella quoso micht. The length of all elnjerde, the large hede hade. The grain of all grene stelle, and of golde heaven, the with bornes bricht with a broad ege, as well sharpened to share as sharp razors, the stelle of a stiff staff, the storne het begrippe. That was wonden with urn to the wandes ende, and all begraven with grain in gracias werkes. And lasse lapped about, that love loked at the head, and so after the halma halched full ofte, with treed tassels there to touch the noche, on buttons of the bricht grenige briden full riche. This hadel heldes him in on the hall entres, drivande to the heye dese, doet he no water, hiles it he never own, but heye he overlooked. The first word that he warp, where is, he said, the governor of this young? Gladly he wolde set at sake in sicht, and with himself spake a reason. To knichtes he kest his ear, and rellet him up and down, his stemmedan constudia, quo walt their most renown. Okay, so once again, most of this stanza is more physical description of him. He has no hauberk, he has no helm. He's not wearing armor plating. This is not like Galeron of Galloway in the last poem that we read. He's not wearing armor, but he has a spear. Or no, he doesn't have a spear. He has, let me see, go back. And an axe in his other, a hoya and unmet. He has a big axe. That's what I was looking for. The axe is important. He's going to use the axe. Spoilers. So that's his big thing. He's just a big axe, uncannily big, unmeta. And he rides forth. We get more of what he's wearing again, and then he rides forth to the dais and says, "Where is the governor of this ging?" Ging here is like, this is actually the ancestor of the word gang, or a form of it. Like, where's this crew you have here? Who's in charge? The use of gang in Old English for like a group of people is tested, but by Middle English it was definitely being used here, and this is just a weird West Midlands variant of that, ging. It is related to the word go, so it's like all people who go together, they're the gang, they're the goers, the co-goers. And he said, gladly I would see that sage, that man, in sight, and with himself speak raison. Speak with him reason, but it doesn't have to be, he's not going to do a rational debate with him. He's just saying, I would like to speak in a reasonable manner, basically. Like to hold counsel with him. Where is he? And all the knights sort of looked everywhere and they were like, what is going on? Trying to figure out who or what is going on. And he stemmed, he stopped, and con studia quo val thermos reno. He's looking around trying to figure out who is the most sort of worthy to be the governor of this gang. So I think we have time for one more stanza. There was looking on lengtha theluda to beholda, for each man had merveild quat hit mene micht, so the hadder on a horse micht such a hue lach, as growe grene an the grace, as the grace and grener het semed, thin grene all mile on golde glow on the brichter. Al studiet that stod, and stalke him nere, with all the wonder of the world, that he worch schulde. For felle saliets had I seen, but such never are. For thee for phantom or fiery, the folk there hit damed. Therefore to answara what's arge money, adel fricka. And all stone that the steven, and stonstil seten, in a swoga silence, for the sala richa. And all were slipped upon slepe, so slacked her lotus in hia, I demehit not all for dota, but some for courtesia, but let him that all should lota, cast unto that we. So, we're at the stage where everyone is sort of looking around, and looking at him, and being like, whoa, never seen someone that green, like, color of grass, even, like, greener than grass, but also green with sort of golds shining, threaded through all of his outfit and horse's hair and all of that. So everyone's looking at him, but are stunned silent. They think he might be a phantom or a fiery. He might be fae or a ghost. Fae is probably closer to the truth, considering what we learn later. Spoilers, I guess. But Phantom and Fae, the line between those is not very thick, as you might be recalling from Sir Orfeo. There's sort of a connection between the Fae and the spirits of the dead. They're not necessarily the same as each other, but we saw that the Fae were sort of keeping watch over the dead, or like kidnapping people so that they would be dead, or just like their kingdom is also where the dead go, sort of thing. So yeah, those two show up together is interesting, and also they alliterate Phantom Fair Folk. So they're all looking around. Who's gonna speak up, and also what does he mean by what's his purpose here? And so they're all kind of stunned silent, and they're going to let Arthur be the one to speak. I think we have time for one more stanza, so Arthur's going to speak. Then Arthur before he desa that aventur beholdes, and reckonly him reverenced, for rad was he never, and said, we Welcome I wist to this place. They head of this hostel Arthur I hat. Licht lovely jadon and lenga I the prime. And quat so the willa is way shall wit after. Nay, as help me, quoth the hathel. He that on he sittes to wona any quilla in this one, it what's not mean errand. But for the loss of the lady, is lift up so here. And the bornes best are holden, stivest under stelgere, and steadest to read. The wichtest and the worthiest of the world's kunde, preve for to pry within other pure likes, and here is kudde courtesy, as he hath heard carp, and that hath wined me hither, I wis, at this time. Ye my beseker be this branch that he bear here, that he passe as in pace, and no plicht seche. For had he found in fair in feiting Weeza, he have a hauberk at home, and the helm both, a shield and a sharp spear, sheen and the bricht, and the other weapon is to weld, I wene well als. But, for he wold nowhere, me wedes are softer. But if thou be so bold, as alle bornets tellen, thou wilt grant me godly, the gamen, that ye ask bericht, Arthur. Arthur kon onsware, anside circorteisen knicht. If thou crave batailbare, her feilets do not to ficht. Okay, so we get Arthur speaking, the knight speaking, the green knight speaking, and then we get Arthur speaking one more time. So what did they say? So Arthur does respond here. I really am going to try to find a numbered version of this for next time, because it is really hard to search for where it was every time. I usually make a mental note of what number I'm on, and then I go back to it. It makes it really hard when I can't do that. So, especially just with how close together all these lines are. So, Arthur says, well, welcome, sir. What brings you here? I'm Arthur. I'm in charge here. Tell us what you would like. What do you want? Tell us, and you could stay with us, get off your horse, hang out. And then I says, "Nay, has helped me." Nope, no thanks. He said, "It's not my job to come here and hang out. It's not my job to come here and hang out. But I come to you people to basically see the strongest knights and the bravest." But he says, "I'm not here to fight, though. I have weapons at home." He lists his helm and his hauberk, his shield and his spear. But I did bring an axe, and if you will let me, I would like to play a little game. Just a little wee game is what he wants. He points out that his me weighed this are softer. His weeds, as in his clothes, are softer. So, and then Arthur says, "If you want battle, you're not gonna be missing out here. This is the place to come if you want to challenge someone to a fight." We were learning earlier, Arthur's into that. He wants people to make jousting challenges and stuff at Christmas. So he's like, "Okay, sure, we're game." But the Green Knight just said he doesn't want to fight. He just wants a game. So next time we'll find out what his game is and what Sir Gawain has to do with it. Because so far we've mostly just got, we've only got Arthur and the Knight speaking. So next time we're at the end of this stanza, I will try to bring one that has numbers next time. We will continue on from here. That is all for tonight. We will continue with Passus 1 next time, find out what the game's all about, what happens. Tomorrow, from noon to 2 Pacific, we'll have another project stream where we're continuing to work on the Northumbrian rune poetry, so that's still going on. if you want to check that out. That will be here, and then it will be recorded and put onto YouTube afterwards. So anyways, thank you for everyone who was able to be here tonight, and anyone watching in the future. Have a great rest of your time zone. Again, next time I'll bring a better edition that is easier for me to find my place in. But I hope this was enjoyable. Have a good rest of your time zone. I think I already said that. I didn't want to repeat myself, but thank you and farewell.